Welcome to the show. This is Mornings with Mike. I'm Mike Hewlett, and happy to have you along for the ride today. All right, we got a good show for you today, I believe. We've got Matt Frentheway coming on to talk a little bit more about the state of housing and mortgages and appraisals. Matt is a local appraiser, so he's going to help us understand home values a little bit better and understand what's going on there. So looking forward to that. We'll jump right into weather here. It has just been, I say this all the time, but I'm not a hot weather kind of guy. I mean, it's nice occasionally to have it be really hot if you're going to be out in a pool or swimming in a river or something like that. But I'm not enjoying this this really hot weather. The high is going to be 96 here in Heber today, and that is just too hot. That means Salt Lake's going to be like 100 and something. That's too hot. So yeah, it's going to be warm today, and we're not going to see a ton of relief as we go through the week. It will drop down a little bit, down to a high of 88 on Wednesday, and then kind of stabilizing in those low 90s towards the end of the week, with a slight chance of rain, a slight 20% chance of rain tomorrow, and a 10% chance of rain on Friday. So it's so hard to predict the weather here, I think, because of the mountains. Even if you see these storm fronts moving in and kind of swirling around and stuff, it just doesn't always do what everybody thinks it's going to do, because of these mountains with their thermal updrafts screwing everything up around us. So typically, if it rains in Provo, it's going to rain here. If it rains in Salt Lake, it probably isn't going to affect us somehow. But every now and then we'll get a storm that comes in from the north, but not very often. So that's what the weather looks like. And we'll move into some of the other local stories. Sports is always something that I enjoy. I don't know if you out there follow it very much, but I like staying apprised of things, even when I'm frustrated with the various organizations and things. I'm always frustrated with the NBA. I don't know. I need to get over it because it really doesn't matter. But it was a big part of my childhood, and it still means a lot to me. So anyway, I guess locally here, the Utah Jazz were forced to make a decision whether or not to offer this enormously large contract. Outrageously large contract to Gordon Hayward, who is so far has not shown that he's worth that amount of money, but they were forced to make a decision because otherwise another team would get him at that price, and they went ahead and offered him that money. So now Gordon Hayward is going to be guaranteed to receive almost $16 million a year for the next 4 years, which is really frustrating for me as a Jazz fan, and I just have never been very impressed with Gordon Hayward. So I hope that he lives up to the contract, because that is an awful lot of money. That's almost as much money as we ended up paying Andrei Kirilenko at the end of his contract that caused so many problems for the organization. So I don't know, but they didn't have much of a choice. They had to do something there, and they have a minimum amount of money that they are required to spend, which is kind of silly. So anyway, that's where we're at now. So Gordon Hayward is going to be the face of the franchise, apparently, for the next little while. Or at least he'll be getting paid more than anybody else. The World Cup, they finished up, and Argentina faced Germany in the World Cup final. It's been quite a few years for both teams since they have won a World Cup championship. Argentina, of course, was is the arch nemesis of Brazil. So the Brazilians had not only faced that horrible embarrassment of being just absolutely demolished by Germany in the semifinals, but then also lost their third place match to the Netherlands, and then Argentina was the one that got to play for the championship, but much to the Argentinians' dismay, they lost in extra time to Germany, and Germany got its first World Cup win since 1996, so it's been a while for them as well, but they were just absolutely dominant throughout this whole World Cup. The U.S. faced them in the group of death, as they call it, the first round, basically, and just lost 1-0. So the U.S. held their own pretty well. Half of our team, it seems like, are actually half German with dual citizenship. So it says something about what kind of soccer players Germany produces. And they are just phenomenal. So, or at least for now. So that was fun to watch, and now it's over. That I forget that tournament lasts like a month. I mean, it's been going on for quite a while. So it's kind of a relief to have it over with. But the next World Cup, I believe, will be in Russia, and hopefully they'll have those Olympic hotels finished by then. I'm sure they're going to be all over the country there, but it'll be interesting to see how that goes. That's essentially all that's really going on sports-wise right now. So gas prices are just absolutely out of control. I don't know what the answer is there. Well, I have some personal feelings, and what I believe is the bigger problem. Every summer we deal with this when we transition from winter gasoline to summer gasoline. Supposedly, summer gasoline is more expensive, but it is cleaner. And so not only are we paying more for supposedly better gasoline, but we are also paying more at the pump because the transition from winter gasoline to summer gasoline takes a lot of time at the refineries. And so they'll literally shut down a refinery for like 2 weeks to make this transition to start making the cleaner gasoline, the more expensive gasoline. But that also drives up the price because they're not producing, and so the stockpiles start to get drained down, and that raises the price of gasoline. We also are fighting issues outside of our country, across the world, that are affecting gas prices. We've got issues in the Ukraine still. We've got lots of problems going on in Iraq and other Middle Eastern countries with production of oil and all of that affects OPEC, affects how much the price of gas goes up and everything else. What is really frustrating to me, there are two things. First of all, I really don't think that gas prices are, I don't think that they need to be as high as they are. I don't believe that all these things around the world and even locally are really justifying the current price of gasoline. I think that there are other motivations involved there. There is a certain group, section of our population that feels very strongly that the burning of gasoline and oil is severely damaging our ecosystem and environment, and so I think they are very motivated to keep gas prices high so that people drive less and people feel forced to purchase more fuel-efficient vehicles and things like that. And, you know, while I agree that it's important to protect our air quality, it's important to protect our environment and our ecosystem, I don't appreciate that there are people out there sort of forcing it instead of letting it be a decision that people are allowed to make. Anyway, the other thing that I think is a huge problem, though, with the oil prices and gas prices and everything, and I know this is an overly simplistic view of the situation, and I know it's more complex than this, but bottom line, I don't believe that a commodity as critical to our nation's health, our economy's health, our ability to thrive as a country, our ability to create and produce and expand and do everything we need to be a strong, healthy country and economy. I don't believe that a commodity that important should be allowed to be manipulated by investment and speculation. Essentially, this is what I think is causing the biggest problem with gas prices being as high as they are. And I mean, in some parts of the country, they're paying well over $4 a gallon right now, which is just, it's just horrible. Especially if you drive a lot. I mean, if you don't drive very far, it probably doesn't affect you too much, other than food prices and the price of everything that has to be shipped anywhere goes up. And the absurdity of all of the situation is that it's less expensive for oil and gas producers here in the United States to export their oil and gas to other countries than it is for them to ship it across our country because of the intense regulation, which is also causing the price to go up. But you get these multi-billion-dollar funds and multi-billionaires and people who are looking for ways to increase their vast finances, and so they're allowed to use the stock market to say, okay, well, I know that, or I think demand for gasoline is going to be higher in the coming months. So I'm going to buy up a whole bunch of gasoline, a whole bunch of stock in gasoline companies and oil companies, and I'm going to, or actually buy the commodity itself, hoping that it's going to be more expensive down the road. And then, of course, they go through and they buy it all up, and then they sell it for a profit, and it's almost a self-fulfilling. I mean, they're the ones that are causing the prices to go up, and then they're able to sell it for a higher price. there's just certain things like that that I just don't feel is in the best interest of our country to allow things like that to be bought and sold in such a way, especially with the speculation and futures and things like that. I just don't agree with it. I think it much like the price of gold used to be. I think we should go back to a gold standard. I think we should have an oil standard. I think we should have the price of oil set at a certain amount, and the more you produce, the more you make, but not have it be manipulated by people who have so much money that they, it really doesn't matter to them. If it costs them a little bit more to fill up their Maserati or whatever, because they've made so much money on the back end, it doesn't affect them at all. But that's not very capitalist of me, but that is how I feel. I think it's a mistake to allow it to be so heavily manipulated through stocks and through the market. Anyway, so that's, gas is just outrageously expensive, and it will continue to be. And we've just become a country where we just stop complaining. I mean, it's just status quo now. We just don't even, it doesn't bother us that we're paying $4 a gallon for gas. And no one ever says anything, so no one does anything about it. I did want to touch on this horrific tragedy out of Texas. A Utah man who had been horribly violent with his wife and family, and she had left him and gone into hiding to escape his violence and just the nightmare of a life that she was experiencing. She had family in Texas, and this monster, who I don't know how he wasn't already locked up, because it seems like there was ample evidence for that to happen. Anyway, he decided that his estranged wife must be hiding in Texas with her family. So he makes the trip down to Texas, and he finds this beautiful family, and I'm not entirely sure if it was his wife's brother or sister or cousin or whatever, but he's convinced that they are hiding her, and so he knocks the door down. The oldest daughter, the 15-year-old daughter, is home alone. He takes her hostage and waits for the rest of the family to come home. The rest of the family comes home. There's nothing they can do because their daughter is being held by this maniac with a gun. And he proceeds to tie the rest of them up, demand that they tell him where his wife and children are, and they have no idea. They are not hiding her, of course, and he proceeds to murder each one of them with a shot to the back of the head. Miraculously, the oldest girl, the first captive, only endured a bullet graze, which fractured her skull, and she remained conscious at some point, and was smart enough to recognize that she needed to play dead, or she would be. She stayed alive. Once he left, he had threatened, I'm going to go to the grandparents. I'm going to kill everybody. And so she got up, called 911, said, this is what just happened, and he's going to my grandparents' house. He's going to kill all of them, and we'll just go down the line. of all our family. And police responded immediately, tracked the guy down. There was a standoff, and eventually they took him into custody. And it's just, I mean, it's been like 2 days or 3 days since this happened, but 2 days after it happened, after this little girl was shot in the head and survived it, they hold a press conference, and she gives this like incredible speech, and I mean, she almost, it's just unbelievable how strong and resilient this little girl is. I mean, she stands up in front of these, hundreds of people who have gathered to honor the family and everything, and you just, I mean, obviously she is horribly devastated by the situation, but I mean, she is unbelievably resilient. And she quotes Harry Potter and talks about she's going to see her family again, and it's just unbelievable how strong this girl is, and it's just really inspiring to see that kind of strength in a human being. And not only did she survive the ordeal, but she saved the lives of a number of other people as well. I think they had like 30 relatives, immediate relatives in the area that this monster could have gone after. And she ended up losing 4 siblings and both of her parents, and it's unbelievable. But it's interesting though. When I was growing up, there, if you heard the word Mormon or LDS or something in national news, it was such a rare occasion. They would make a mention of it somewhere, maybe in an obscure mention in a movie or something like that, and you would just be like, "Whoa, they just said Mormon. That's weird. Like, how do they even know we exist?" And obviously we have seen with reality television and different things, we've seen kind of this become a lot more in the public eye. I mean, Mormons, everybody kind of knows at least that they exist now, and hopefully understands that we don't have horns and tails and multiple wives. At least some people understand that. But it's unbelievable to me. I don't understand why this is the case and what it means, but there are so many of these horrible tragedies that make national headlines on a regular basis, that are all happening to and by Mormons. This family in Texas was an LDS family, and of course, this little girl said in her press conference that she knew that her mother and father and brothers and sisters were in a better place, and that she would see them again someday. And I have to imagine that has a lot to do with why she is being so resilient. But it's just the Elizabeth Smart thing, just these horrible things are happening, seems like very often to Mormons. And it's not just like Utah stuff, it's stuff in Washington and stuff in Texas and stuff in I don't know, it's just interesting that I mean, I guess there's a lot of us now, and it's just weird that we seem to be involved in a lot of these horrific things. But anyway, I'm still am just so amazed by this little girl and how resilient she is, and to not just be curled up in a ball. I mean, I that's how I would be if I lost my family. I would not be so resilient. But anyway, it's inspiring, and hopefully this guy just gets obliterated in court and receives the death penalty, because that's what he deserves. All right. Well, want to welcome in our guest now. And Matt, you want to come on in here there? All right. Have a seat there and pull the microphone up, and we'll get to talking. It's all right. So flip the switch on there. Make sure that the microphone is on. There's a little switch on the bottom. Clear your throat. All right. Okay, Matt Frentheway, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
How are things going?
Great.
Good. Okay, so I don't think I've ever asked you. I've always just said Frentheway. Is that the way you pronounce your name?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Frentheway.
Frentheway.
Break it into 3 syllables.
Okay. But it's not like, okay, so it's more, but there's more like a soft TH, not like a th.
Yeah, Frentheway.
Frentheway.
Yeah.
All right, cool. It's I remember seeing it for the first time like 6 or 7 years ago, and I was like, what do I do? What do I do with this?
Well, if you see anywhere else, they're related to me, I promise.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's not. Probably don't find Frentheway on a cup at a at a gift shop.
Not typically.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. I appreciate it. And let's get right into the appraisal stuff. How long have you been doing the appraisals, and what made you decide to get into it?
Well, I appreciate you having me here today, Mike. I've got some good stuff to tell the Wasatch County and whoever else is out there is listening today about appraisals and real estate values. I started appraising when I was in Phoenix back in 2004.
Okay.
And my best friend down there was an appraiser, and he trained me to be an appraiser down there. And that was about a 1.5-year process for me to be trained. About the time I got done being trained down there, I moved up here. And then I commuted back and forth between here and Phoenix for a year.
Wow, you traveled back and forth to do appraisals.
Yeah, I was just licensed in Arizona at the time.
Right.
And then in 2006, so I moved here in 2005. In 2006, I opened up Aspen Appraisal Group here in Wasatch County. So I've been here for 8 years, but appraising for about 10.
Okay, great. You've weathered a pretty nasty storm with appraising. I actually, I guess it was probably maybe 6 years ago or so. I was still trying to figure out what to do with my life, and made a horribly timed decision to try to become an appraiser, and went and took all the tests and passed the test to become an apprentice, and had talked to you about that, and I mean, I could not have picked a worse time maybe in the history of our country to become to try to become an appraiser.
Yeah, that's true.
What happened there? I mean, how was your industry affected by the economic collapse?
Well, back in 2007, in Utah, anyways, is when the market kind of started to melt down. Sure. 2008 is when it really hit. But back in those days, an appraisal practice was more like still as a professional job, much like an attorney or something like that, or a CPA. But back then, we were more in control of our own destiny. We could have relationships with mortgage brokers and loan officers, right? And if we did a good job for them, they would use us to do their appraisals for their clients. So we could build our business on relationships and market and things like that. But when the whole real estate fallout happened, a lot of the public and a lot of the government blamed appraisers, in some cases justifiably, sometimes not. Yeah. That it was the appraiser's fault for the real estate. A few of them
gave the whole thing a bad name.
Yeah, for overvaluing properties and people going underwater. And I can see their standpoint on that, because it was possible for us to get a lot of pressure from homeowners or from mortgage companies to appraise properties as high as we could get it, so they could do the refinance or do the sale. Right. And sometimes an appraiser, if they didn't appraise it for high enough, sometimes they wouldn't get hired for future jobs. So there's a little pressure there. So the government tried to eliminate that pressure by taking the relationship away that the appraisers had with banks and lenders directly.
Mm-hmm.
And they essentially inserted a middleman, which you don't have to do anymore, but back then they inserted a middleman called an appraisal management company.
Mm-hmm.
So most banks and lenders had to send the appraisal orders to a middleman company, who would then farm it out to a local appraiser.
Right.
So it hurt us. It hurt appraisers two ways. Number one, it just completely decimated our business. We had to start from scratch.
Right.
We lost all of our clients,
Right.
basically, which
Yeah.
that really, really hurt. And then, of course, the appraisal volume overall went down. Cause
Yeah,
people
no one
weren't
was buying houses now.
or refinancing, and nobody could because they were underwater for
Right.
the most part. So it was kind of a double-edged sword. And then another thing is these middleman companies, in order for them to stay in business, obviously they have to generate income as well.
Right.
And
So all
so
the costs went up, and you
The
couldn't
cost
charge.
went up to consumers in a lot of cases, and the appraisal fee went down to appraisers.
Right.
So we were kind of fighting three. We were fighting three
It
battles.
was, yeah, it was. I don't know that there were many industries other than maybe construction that got hit harder than the appraisal industry.
Yeah.
But you made it. I mean, kudos. A lot of other people did not make it. So, well done. You must be doing something right. Okay, so help us understand. An appraisal is not a home inspection. It's something else. Help us understand the difference between the two.
Good. That's a good question. Well, the thing that those two professions have in common is there's an inspection done. An inspector comes and inspects the house, and an appraiser comes and inspects the house. But it's two different kinds of inspections. The home inspector comes and crawls through the attic spaces and checks the soundness of the house, checks the utilities, makes sure the electrical outlets are all working okay, and making sure all the mechanical systems are good and things like that. They do a much thorough inspection just to make sure the house is sound and to point out anything that might need to be repaired or things for the owner to be aware of. An appraisal inspection, an appraiser comes to the house and he does walk through the house. He or she walks through the house and looks at the condition of the property. That's what they're looking for, is the overall condition. Are the walls beat up, or are they freshly painted? Is it a new house or is it an old house? What kind of amenities do they have in the house, or do they have stainless appliances, granite counters, just things on the surface? The appraiser's just looking at things on the surface.
Sure.
And the other thing the appraiser does is he or she measures the outside of the house to get the most accurate square footage, where an inspector does. An inspector's just looking at the soundness and the structural integrity and the mechanical systems of the house. Appraiser's just looking at what a potential buyer would be looking at if they were walking through the house.
Sure. Okay, so when you need to get an appraisal, is there just one kind of appraisal to get, or are there multiple? I mean, are you looking for different kinds of things there?
Well, a real estate appraisal, they all come down to an appraiser giving their value opinion for the house.
Sure.
But there's different there's different kinds of appraisals a person can get, or an appraisal order can come from two different places. Number one, in most cases, it comes from a mortgage company or a lender when somebody wants to buy a house or when an owner wants to refinance the house.
Mm-hmm.
The bank will find an appraiser to come value the house for the bank. And that's what we call lender appraisals. The other type of appraisals are called what I call non-lender appraisals, where a lender is not involved typically. And these would include if somebody's going to get a divorce, they need to figure out what the house is worth to settle that estate.
Sure.
Or for estate planning, if somebody passes away or is going to put a house or a real estate in a trust, they need to value the property so that they can do their estate taxes and their estate planning based on that.
Yeah,
and
you can't just do a stated value. I think it's worth this.
Right. They have to have a professional opinion on what the... So those are what we call the non-lender type of appraisals. And then within both those type of appraisals, a person can have a full comprehensive appraisal where the appraiser will come out and inspect or walk through the house and measure the house and do everything they can for that. The next step down would be called a desk or a drive-by appraisal. Appraiser just drives by and takes a picture of the house and goes off of county records or MLS records on the size of the house and does the appraisal from there.
Gotcha.
And then the last and lowest tier of appraisal would be a desktop appraisal, where the appraiser does not go look at the house at all. He or she just values the house based on the information they get in the office from the owner or the seller, and that. So that would probably be the least accurate appraisal. The most accurate appraisal would be a full comprehensive appraisal.
Sure. Can you buy a house with just a desktop appraisal, or?
Not typically.
Yeah, they want more. They want someone to actually look at it, right?
Yeah, it's up to the banks since they're the ones that are going to be lending on it. In most cases, they want a full comprehensive appraisal.
Yeah. Now, one of the major concerns that the industry seemed to have when I was when I was trying to get into it and everything was collapsing around us, was there was a large concern that they were going to start using more kind of just software to value homes. How big of a problem is that with the industry? Is that, I mean, you seeing that a lot, or is that really not come to fruition? I mean, because it just seemed like such a bad idea for a computer to tell you how much a house was worth, where, like we just talked about, they're not going to go look at the house. They're not going to actually see what's going on. They're just going to say, well, you know, this is how much square footage, and it has this and this and this, so it's worth this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a big scare for appraisers back in the mid 2005 through 2009 or so.
Yeah,
is that the computer generated appraisal was going to replace them.
Right.
But what it turned out is just what you said, is that the lenders and people just couldn't rely on those computer generated appraisals. They weren't reliable enough, since there was no person on the ground, you know, professional looking at the house and figuring that out. So those, for the most part, went away. There's been kind of there's been a new thing called an alternative valuation model that a lot of banks or a lot of people are offering, and that is the appraiser doesn't go look at the house and he gets all the computer information, just like the alternative that didn't work out, but the appraiser at the same time puts his value opinion in there and puts his expertise in there. So it's kind of a hybrid now, and it seems like there's been a start with that. A lot of people are trying to do that, or lenders are trying to do that for appraisals, and we'll see how it turns out with that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch and pay attention to. There's a lot of probably a lot of what you deal with is, or a lot of what people ask you about is, if I put granite countertops in my house, if I put hardwood flooring, replace the linoleum with hardwood flooring, what's that going to do for the value of my house?
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you would and would not recommend? What are some of the things you can do to your house that will actually increase the value, and what are some of the things that people think they're going to increase value but don't really?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that question, and I wish a lot of people would call us and just ask that question.
Right.
It wouldn't cost them anything to find out before they put all their money into their house.
Yeah.
And find out later that it may be held, but in a lot of cases they lost money on between what they spent and what the appraised value is. Right. I would say that probably the most important things a person could do to up the value of their house is just real simple things, like make sure, freshly painted walls. Mm-hmm. That always helps. That covers up the marks and the scuffs and things like that. It makes the house look a lot newer. Sure. And it's not that expensive to do. Right. That would probably be my number one thing, is to paint the house and make it nice that way inside with the least cash outlay. Sure. Flooring would be another one. Of course, there's many types of flooring a person can get. They can go crazy on the cost, mm-hmm. or they can keep it conservative. It depends on the kind of house you're living in, is what you want to match. For example, if you live in a manufactured home and you're putting really expensive hardwood floors in, like you find over in Park City in Deercrest, you're not going to get your money out of that. Right. But if you keep it with wood laminate flooring or simple wood flooring, you're going to probably get the most bang out of for your buck on the flooring. So you got to keep it in perspective on what price range your house is in, and match those materials with that. I'd say stainless appliances, granite counters always help. Just be careful of the cost. Is the stainless thing still what everybody's looking for? It seems to be that seems to be an upgrade in most houses that are going in. They're still putting stainless in.
When are we going to go back to turquoise? Come on.
I don't know. There's kind of a renaissance, but going back to the 70s. So yeah, browns. Yeah. Love me some old brown refrigerators. Yep. Another thing is cabinetry. A person cannot spend a bunch of money on their cabinetry. They can keep their cabinetry in place, but refinish it. Mm-hmm. That's usually very, very inexpensive, but it makes the cabinetry look brand new. Redo the doors and faces and stuff. You'd get a lot of bang for your buck on that. Okay. Yep. Some things not to do that I would caution people is, again, you got to match the materials in your house to the type of house you have. Don't put too expensive materials in the house, or if you have a really expensive house, don't put less expensive materials like vinyl flooring into a multi-million-dollar house. That's just not going to work out too well. Right. Another thing is landscaping. Landscaping, I see a lot of people put money in landscaping and it looks great. Unfortunately, on an appraised value, they usually don't get all their money out of
There's
it.
probably not much you can do between a $500 tree or a $100 tree. It probably doesn't really make a difference for you.
On the flip side of that, it adds curb appeal. And
Sure.
So the house may sell quicker.
Of course.
And they may get some more money out of it, but it's hard for an appraiser to prove or justify how much more value landscaping will get compared to a house that has, just plain landscaping compared to professional landscaping. And then the other thing that I see a lot of people lose money on is detached barns or detached garages. A lot of people can go crazy on those expenses.
Yeah.
And they usually on the appraised value and even on a resale value don't get all that money back.
Right.
So I'd caution people on that before they went through that.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, there's different reasons why people build these things, and a lot of it is just for personal, what they want for themselves. But if you have a mind single to increasing the value of your home, those are the things that won't work out too well.
For sure.
So what's going on here locally right now? I mean, it seems like prices are too high again already.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't seem like it took long enough, but I mean, what's available in the Wasatch County area right now? What are you seeing?
Well, prices have come up. I pulled some statistics this morning just to make sure I was up to date from 2007.
Where did you post them?
I'm sorry, I pulled them from the MLS.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I pulled these statistics from the MLS, and my search parameters were I did 3 search parameters: Wasatch County in general, and then 1 in Heber and 1 in Midway.
Okay.
So overall in Wasatch County, prices are up, and Heber as well. Prices are up about 10% compared to this time last year.
10% in a year. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So I do see that it's leveling out, though. The price increases are leveling out. The bottom was around first quarter of 2012, fourth quarter of 2011. That was really the bottom.
Okay.
Of the median price home in Wasatch County.
About where were we at that time?
But let's see. Back in the fourth quarter of 2011, the median price of a home in Wasatch County was $219,000.
Huh.
And as of the end of second quarter of 2014, it was $311,000.
Oh my goodness!
So there's been a big jump since 2011.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. One thing I've noticed though is that the rate of increase has leveled out the past year or two.
Mm-hmm.
Since 2012, it's leveled out. 2013, it's leveled out. So it's more stable. It's up, but it's more stable now.
Okay.
I honestly, going in the future, I don't have a crystal ball, but based on experience, I see it leveling out in the median price range right now.
Okay.
I think when interest rates went up about a point last year for mortgage rates, it kind of curtailed the huge jumps.
Put a little bit
increases.
of put the brakes on it a little bit.
Yeah. I will say, that's the most of the prices in Wasatch County are from 100,000 to 350,000. That's where the big volume is. That's where most
for a
single family home.
Oh, for a home.
Yeah.
Is there something there? So there are still homes available for even in the 100s. I mean, I would expect that we wouldn't even have anything in that price range.
Yeah, there's not that much. When under 200,000 is kind of rare when you can find a home under 200,000. Usually those homes are built in the early 1900s and they're fixer-uppers. And once they're fixed up, I mean, those homes that were built in the early 1900s are still selling for 200 or above once they're all fixed up. So
even when they're leaning 3 or 4 degrees to the side.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's the novelty of having an older home. Yeah. But the huge volume, or the biggest volume and the most active part of the market in Wasatch County is really 200 to 300. Okay. 200 to 350,000. $500,000 and above, there's not as much sales. I mean, there is listings and sales in that price range, but the influx is the lower price range. And what I noticed, though, if there's any builders or developers out there listening, is that there's kind of a hole in the market between $400,000 and $500,000 price range homes. There are some out there, but there's not a lot. So if a developer's looking to build houses to fit a niche that the market's not really covering right now, in my opinion, that's where it would be. That's the range.
Seems like short sales and bank-owned properties are kind of not really around too much anymore, are they?
No, I mean, they're around once in a while. I don't see a whole lot of bank-owned properties, but short sales still happen from time to time. But not like they used to be. The what we call arm's length transactions, or sales where there's not a distressed homeowner.
Right.
That is where the majority of the market is right now, which is good. That provides a lot of stability to the market.
Sure.
One thing I did want to note, though, that was pretty impressive is back in the heyday in 2007, the volume of home sales was around 70 houses per quarter is around where the houses are sale, the volume of houses. Now we're in around about 90. So even though we've leveled out, back in the heyday in 2007 when the bubble was on the edge of bursting, we still have more volume now than we did back then.
Okay.
So that is a good indicator that the market's more stable. Unless interest rates got really jacked up or something really bad happened out there, they're a lot more stable now than they were back in 2007. So I don't really anticipate a bubble happening right now if things continue the way they are.
Okay, so that was going to be one of my other questions. So you think we're pretty safe as far as bubbles and stuff are concerned? You feel like the prices of homes are at a point where they're not overvalued, and that we shouldn't expect to see. I mean, I talked about this last week with Maria Buckley, but there are reports that the federal government is now starting to put pressure on banks to loan to people with lower credit scores again.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you doing? That's exactly the problem that we dealt with before. Is I mean, it was a perfect storm of problems, but that was one of the major issues. Is the federal government wasn't just encouraging, but they were forcing banks to lend money to people who couldn't handle it. I mean, there's a reason. I mean, I think the credit score system is heavily flawed. I mean, I think that is just absolutely absurd that so much of our lives are dictated by that number, and I think in a lot of circumstances it is a very poor indication of whether or not someone is going to be a reliable I don't know, lendee or whatever. I mean, they're going to receive money. They're going to pay their bills. I don't think that the credit score is a great indication. But that having been said, I still think that overall, I mean, you've got to be really careful about who you lend money to. And if they start saying, well, you need to start lending money to people with a 550 credit score, that might be a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems there's a knee-jerk reaction, or what I call the pendulum, not what I call, but I probably coined it from a lot of other people I've talked to before.
Sure.
The pendulum effect, where back in the early 2000s, the pendulum was on one side and too lenient lending.
Right.
And people that shouldn't have been lent to were being lended to.
Right.
And then, of course, the whole meltdown happened, and the pendulum swung the other way.
Right. And it
where
got
nobody
too
could
extreme.
get a loan. Right. Nobody could get a loan, and that hurt everybody as well.
Yeah.
Right now it seems like it's swinging back more towards the middle, but who knows what's going to happen?
Are we going to be able to stop the pendulum from
keep
keeping
can
going?
we keep it in the middle
Yeah.
in a reasonable area, or is it going to swing the other way again? I don't know. If it swings the other way, we're going to have problems, I think. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and it's it's interesting. We talk about problems with our homeless population and people on the streets, and people don't have places to live, and I think I heard a statistic recently in some news on some news program that that said something like there are enough empty homes in America right now to have a home for every single person in the country to live in a home. Now, obviously, you can't just say, well, you don't have anywhere to live, you just go live here. But there are starting to be programs like that. I think I was watching a program about a group that was trying to raise funds to put homeless people into homes, because there are, especially in dilapidated areas and things like that, there are places for people to live.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously we need people to be able to contribute and pay for things, but there are organizations that are trying to help get people into these homes, because I mean, it doesn't do us any good to have an empty home sitting there. It's just going to cause trouble.
Right.
It's going to be a fire risk. It's going to be a potential hotspot for crime. And if there's an abandoned home, people are going to be sneaking in there and doing drugs and all kinds of stuff, and they're going to vandalize it, and then they could be physically at risk themselves. There are so many issues that go along with that. So I don't know. It's just it's interesting dilemma that we have with a lot of inventory in certain parts of the country, obviously, and what to do with all of that. But I do hope that they are very, very careful. Yeah. That they don't swing that pendulum too far the other direction, because you start lending homes to people, and then the values start to go up, and people can't afford it anymore, and then we're 2008 all over again. All right. Well, is there anything else that you would like to get across to the listeners before we let you get back to your busy day?
I would, I just follow up on the conversation we just had about the stability of the market. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. If the job market goes south, housing is going to hurt. If lending loosens up too loose, lending probably will bubble out and get hurt again. Right now, if things just continue on the same trend, I think we're fairly stable. One thing that I noticed now compared to back in the early 2000s is the amount of building going on in Wasatch County is increased a lot in the past year or two.
Sure.
Most 2 years. And as it was back in the early 2000s, it was going crazy. But one difference I see is most of the building going on in Wasatch County is for owner occupants, people that are building a house to live in. Whereas back then, a lot of it was spec homes, people building houses and then not living in them to sell. And what I've noticed on appraisals is the appraised value, when a person is going to get a construction loan or to build a house, the appraised value usually is right around what they're going to spend on building it.
Sure.
So that doesn't leave a whole lot of profit margin for speculation or for spec homes, and which adds more stability to the market right now, I think. So
yeah,
even though we're seeing
really
a lot
of
building, we're seeing a lot of building now, and people may tend to think that's the same thing that was happening back in the early 2000s, but it's just a little bit different in that respect. Is that most of the building is going on is for owner occupants.
That's good. That's good. Do you see a lot of flipping going on?
I don't see a lot of spec home flipping. No. I mean, you have some of the big developers that have come in, like Ivory Homes and Edge Homes, but those aren't really flipping. They're just providing a product.
But I mean, these people that, back before the collapse, people were buying houses, and then, they'd throw in the nicer countertops, and they'd throw in some new cabinets and stuff, and then sell it for a profit. Are you seeing much of that?
Well, yeah, I do see that.
Okay.
Not a ton of it, but I do see it. I think that's always going to be going on, which is good. It increases everybody's values when somebody comes and fixes up a property.
Sure.
But one thing I noticed is back in the early 2000s or the mid 2000s, I guess, before 2007, is people would buy a house at current market value, and then they would spend a little money on fixing it up, but they'd be banking on that in about 2 to 3 months it'd be worth more, 10% more.
Right.
That's what they're banking on. Now when people are flipping homes, they're usually buying the house for a discount. They're buying it for built-in equity, so they can spend some money and then they sell it at market value. So it's a little bit different. I do see it, but it's a little bit different because they're buying them undervalued.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll keep in touch here, and if stuff starts to turn, you can warn us that things are looking hairy. But I'm glad to hear that things are relatively stable, and just want everyone to make sure that when they need an appraiser, of course, I always highly encourage everyone to use a local appraiser like Matt. That it's just crazy to use anyone outside of the area, especially with appraising. It's really important that you have someone that knows the area. I don't know how heavily restricted that is right now from the industry, but you really need to know the area to be able to give a home an accurate value. So your office is just right next to mine. Matt, you're right there on Main Street, and on the corner of First South and Main in the Main Street Plaza. And do you have a website or anything?
Yeah, we don't have a sign on our door, but because we don't get a whole lot of walk-in traffic.
Yeah, that sweet Word document that you printed a little while ago, but that's not there anymore.
Yeah. But no, if anybody wants to find out more about us or contact us, go to our website, which is Aspen, like the tree, appraising, APPRAISING.com. You'll be able to contact us there, and we'll be able to help you out in any way we can. I appreciate you having us, or me, here today, Mike.
Yeah, no, it's not a problem. Well, we appreciate the information, and that's what the show is all about, is just educating people and letting them know what's going on here locally, and sometimes get into a little bit of national stuff. But anyway, thank you again for being on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners for being a part of the program. We really appreciate you tuning in each and every Monday and Wednesday. Feel free to contact us at the station when you have questions, concerns, comments. Obviously, we're on Facebook. You can always give me a call directly. My phone number is 435-671-0772. If you have any questions about what we're doing here on the show, or anything about life and health insurance, because that is, I know more about that than I do about the radio, unfortunately. But this has been fun. So anyway, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you again on, or we'll be talking to you again on Wednesday. So, and just to let you know, we'll have Cameron Phillips from Strawberry Reservoir on to talk about the fishing up there right now, and the trends, and what people can do up there, and what they should be using, and how they can, the different ways that they can enjoy that beautiful area up there. So it'll be a fun show. Thanks again so much, and you have a wonderful rest of your day.